Welcome to Patent Effect Podcast. So, this is the new episode of our podcast channel. And today I have a very distinguished friend and colleague from Sweden, and we will be talking about patent litigation strategies in the pharma industry. And I'm really excited to speak with my guest, who is Hakan Yildirim, who is the IP manager, IP director of Xbrain Pharma. So as you can notice that Xbrain Pharma is also in the pharma industry. So we will be discussing about the biosimilars, the differences of biosimilars and the generics, and the mainly we are focusing on patent litigation strategies. I don't want to make it so long, and I would like to invite Hakan Yildirim to the stage, and then we can start our conversation. Hakan, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, Mustafa. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Everything is fine. It's sun shining in Berlin. It's unusual, but the weather is becoming better and better. And next week, I guess it will be 23 degrees. I hope in Sweden you will see the sunshine.
No, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. Actually, it snowed this morning, just a bit though. So it's spring, but it's a chilly spring. So I don't think we'll see the sun for a while.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that. I think that the similarity of the weather quality quite similar, but I think the Sweden will be more darker than the Berlin, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's still it becomes evening quite earlier than Berlin, I think. Still. But I think we're going to much lighter time, so it's becoming lighter and lighter, and then during the summer, the sun goes down very, very late. Actually, so we have like white nights almost. It's even worse in the northern parts of Sweden, so it's quite okay in Stockholm, but it can be difficult to fall asleep, and you tend to wake up early because the sun goes up quite early. So yeah.
Exactly. But with the part that I like in the summer period in Berlin, the sun goes down at maybe after 10:30.
Mm.
It's totally fine. So you have so much time to do in the
Yeah.
summer period until the sun goes. So it is quite similar in Sweden. So you are living in Sweden, but in which city are you now
I
located?
live in the capital city, Stockholm. I was born and raised up here, so I was born 1972 here in Stockholm.
Yeah. Stockholm. I guess I haven't been in Stockholm before. I have been in Finland, Helsinki, and the Copenhagen, but
Yes.
maybe the next destination will be in Stockholm. Maybe
Yeah, you're welcome, and hope and please contact me if you visit Stockholm. We
I
can
will do.
go
I will
out
do.
and we can go out and have lunch or a
Drink
beer or
something.
something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Hakan, thank you so much for joining our podcast episodes. So, I'm really exciting to speak our topic, patent litigation strategies in the pharma industry. But before jumping on the topic, me and also our audience are wondering about who is Hakan Yildirim. Of course, in the IP ecosystem, especially in the pharma industry, the people know you very much well, but of course we can introduce you in the Turkish market and the European market much more well. If you can say about your background, how did you introduce with the patent business, so, and which subtopics are you focusing on in the patent and also the pharma industry, I would be very happy to hear that.
Okay, great. So I am 51 years old and I'm married. I have 3 kids. My wife Hülya is also originally from Turkey. We have 2 daughters and a son. I was always passionate about science. I was this typical science geek, and I decided to get a study so I could get my master's in chemistry, and thereafter I did research and got my PhD degree from Karolinska Institutet, which is a Stockholm-based biomedical university. Thereafter, I did a bit of teaching, but then applied for a job at the Swedish Patent and Registration Office, which I also got. and worked as a patent examiner between 2007 and 2012. Thereafter, I went over to private practice. I started working at a IP consultancy firm. Then I switched to other consultancy firms. I worked at three different Stockholm-based IP consultancy firms. But in 2018, I applied for a job at a Swedish eye tracking company called Tobii. So I switched technical fields. I had studied a bit of mathematics and computer science at college at Stockholm University. I hadn't worked as a patent professional in the field of computer science. But I applied for a job, got it, and worked at Tobii, which works with augmented reality, virtual reality, as well as eye tracking embedded into laptops, for example. And I was there around 2 years, but then I got an offer I couldn't refuse from Xbrain Biopharma, where I'm working now. They're like, could you imagine working as the head of our IP division? And I said yes. So since 2020, I've been working at Xbrain Biopharma as head of IP. So these 4 years has gone very fast. I think I failed to mention that I'm a European patent attorney. So I became that, I think, around 2019. What's interesting is that when I worked at the Swedish Patent Office, I was 25% working as key account manager, or business to business salesperson. I was very active in Turkey. So I would visit Turkey to sell the Swedish Patent Office's consultancy services like freedom to operate search reports, validity search reports, nullity search reports, as well as the governmental services, because the Swedish Patent Office was doing search and examination for the Turkish Patent Institute back then. And so I was marketing these services. I visited the Turkish Patent Institute, met with Abe Pasan, who was the manager of the whole institute back then. Met with the examiners. Then there was a guy called Oliver Schön, which for the European Union was, working in Turkey, and he liked organizing events. So I spoke at some of those events. So I was active between 2009 and 2012 in Turkey. It was really fun.
And the Professor Habib Hassan now is working on WIPO. And
I know. So yeah, I'm following him, and I know that he's there now.
I remember that time because the Turkish Patent Office is also offering the search report services from the Swedish Patent Office. So now the puzzles are matching that at the time that you were working at the Swedish Patent Office in that time. So you noticed that the Turkish Patent Office has also established their own company to give the services in Turkish markets. So they are providing FTO and valuation. I'm not sure the Swedish Patent Office is providing the patent valuation services as well.
Not valuation, but everything else that you can imagine within the fields of patent searching and patent analytics,
Exactly.
but no evaluation.
So, as you said that you joined the Xbrain company after the COVID, and now you're head of the IP.
No, actually, 4 months before COVID.
Before the COVID, okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, beginning of 2020, and then COVID hit after 4 months. So it was strange to work from home as soon as you start working at a new place. So, but there was no issues.
Xbrain is not a new company, right? Is established in 2008 or something?
Yes, around 2008. It was actually established by one of my professors at Stockholm University. He was a teacher there, Jan Wilhelm de Geer. So he started off a company, filed a patent application. However, and those patent applications resulted in a US patent and the European patent, which was validated in a certain amount of countries. However, then there was no patent filings up until I started. So since then, our patent portfolio has grown a lot. So at the moment, we have 15 patents and around 57 patent applications. But it's a relatively new company. they had different business strategies. I think from the beginning, they were just tailor making proteins for customers. But then after a trip to India, they realized that they should focus on biosimilars, that is biological generics. And
Mm.
after that decision, things have been going really well for Xbrane Biopharma. And last year, the first quarter of last year, we started selling our first biosimilar. Not ourselves per se, because we're a research and development organization. We research and develop DNA constructs, host cells, and methods of producing biosimilars or antibodies at a cheaper cost. But it's our commercialization partner, the German pharma company Stada. I think you refer to them as Stada, that
Mhm.
are handling the commercial activities.
Yeah, yeah. When I or any of our audience should type any kind of biosimilar produced by Xbrain, so they can immediately see that Stada is a partner company
Mm.
in some of the products. So we can say that Xbrain is a kind of spin-off company.
It is, yeah. It's a university, yeah, university spin-off company. And the first time I met them, I was working at an IP consultancy firm, but we had lost them as a client. So
Mm.
as I booked a meeting and tried to get them back on board, they said no, and there were just three people back then. This is like mid 2010s. And then when they asked me to, whether if I was interested in joining them, there were 20. And when I started, there were 30. And then we were 120 in December. But we had to let some people go in the beginning of this year. So we're around 80, 90 now.
Wow. It is so
Yeah.
exciting that to see the growth of a kind of academic spin-off company from the
Yes.
university. So
Yes.
it's really
Yes.
exciting that. So now we are talking about the biosimilars, right? So
Mm.
Xbrain is specialized on the biosimilars in the pharma industry. So we are talking about the patent litigation. But first, we need to make it clear in the mind of our audience to compare the biosimilars and the generics. So we always, hearing the generic drug companies and the originator companies, but what is this biosimilars? So what is the difference between the biosimilars and the generics? And maybe we can talk about the value chain of these three parameters: originator, biosimilar, and the generics.
Yes, so generics is a terminology typically used for small molecules, while the term biosimilar is used for generics that are biologics, typically antibodies, which we develop, as well as enzymes. So biosimilars is a term used for biological generics. It's typically with regard to originators, it's the same companies as that are the originators as in the generic industry. It's the big pharma companies such as Novartis, Genentech, Bristol Myers Squibb, Merck Sharp Dohme, Janssen, or Johnson and Johnson. So it's the same originator players. However, since it's more complex to develop biosimilars, since you have to use bacterial cells or Chinese hamster ovary cells for expressing the antibody or enzyme, the players can be different because it's much more complex to develop a biosimilar due to the fact that you need to have a biological system. And there are various biosimilar players, like Stada works a lot with both biosimilars and generics. Then you have an Icelandic company, Alvotech, that is very strong in the biosimilar sector. And there are several other companies like Organon, which also works with biosimilars. Teva works with biosimilars as well as generics. Coherus works with biosimilars.
So in terms of the biosimilars, is it also still same in terms of the patent strategies? So as a biosimilar company, you have to wait the expire date of the originator patents, right? So
Yeah,
it doesn't change.
yeah, that is correct. So I cannot, different companies have different strategies. So Xbrain's strategy or IP policy is never to infringe others' rights. So we make sure to respect patent expiries, not only like the basic patents that protect antibodies, but as well as production methods and formulations and various devices. Sometimes you need a syringe or a pre-filled syringe, for example. As well as purification methods, that is chromatography methods. So that is our IP policy. There can be generic companies or biosimilar companies that might have a different strategy. They might launch at risk, for example, while trying to revoke others' patents, etc. But our strategy is to really, really respect patent expiry dates. However, although we are mindful of others' rights, there might be an opinion that we are infringing their rights, or they might allege that we are. And in those types of circumstances, we of course defend ourselves.
So it means that Xbrain and you, as a head of IP, giving the most importance on the freedom to operate searches, I guess.
It's crucial. I mean, if you want to be mindful of others' rights, then the only way to achieve or attain that mindfulness is to conduct very extensive freedom to operate searches. Not only like a simple one that spin-offs do before they decide to commercialize a product, but much more extensive ones. For example, with regard to a specific antibody, in one of our antibody programs, I have conducted 50 freedom to operate searches, not only one, but 50 on various aspects, because the originator companies, they can protect every single step in the production of an antibody. In a case, they had even protected the wash solution for washing an affinity chromatography column. So it's at that level. So you have to analyze, that is, conduct extensive patent database searches on each step in your production method to make sure that you're not infringing any rights owned by the originator or their exclusive licenses, etc. I mean, you don't. We never restrict any searches to companies, so we just conduct the searches without any restrictions, neither geographic, company, etc. Because you never know who the originator is working with. They could be in licensing a patent application from a minor company working in some other country. So you have to make sure that you identify everything possible that could pose a risk.
So the university might also have the originator track patent or any
Yes, of
spin-off
course.
company like
Yes,
Xbrain as
yes,
it
yes.
started 20 years ago. So I remember that Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine is coming from NIH, for example. NIH has developed that. So for conducting your patent freedom to operate, can we say that we have to focus on not only the originator company that we well known, and also we
Mm,
need to make it broader to find out the universities and the startups, spin-offs, and also maybe individual the patents, right?
exactly. You're totally right. And big pharma companies have, in some cases, stopped doing own research and development, and instead they've started focusing on buying various projects from universities, for example, going in at buying projects that have achieved phase one clinical trials, sometimes phase two, sometimes phase three, so they can go in at various points in the clinical trials, or even before that, during development phase, they will buy off a project from university or spin off, etc. So you should I never restrict freedom to operate searches on any specific company. That would be extremely risky. So we have all the time in the world world to make sure that make sure to identify uh, every risk that's out there. Our field is very special since we engineer DNA constructs. So we work with genes, so we have to conduct sequence searches also on the genes as well as on the product, the antibodies in our case. So we have to conduct DNA sequence searches, antibody sequence searches, etc., which is an extra dimension, and there are various different search tools and databases, and each database is unique, and the antibodies and the DNA constructs have been indexed differently in these databases depending on who the provider is. So you must actually have multiple sequence search tools, as well as in some cases multiple patent database search tools also. So it's a complex area. Sorry, I cut you off. So you were
No, no, no.
saying.
I was planning to mention about different special patent databases that can give you a chance to find out different sequences. So as you mentioned that it so creating your own patent search query in terms of obeying all the rules by means of creating different synonyms, the terminology of the different
Mm.
the molecules. So as a biosimilar company, you have to be very careful about to be sure that you find out the exact terminologies before searching your patents.
You're right. And in some cases, it doesn't even help to use this correct terminology, because the originator can, in some cases, file patent applications on a fermentation method. They don't even mention the antibody, they just use the term recombinant protein. So there is a big risk of missing these types of patents if you're too specific in your searches. So sometimes you just have to go into an IPC class and just go through all of the documents in that class in order to make sure that you're not missing something. So the searches must be conducted very broadly. In some cases, you don't need to. I mean, you shouldn't use a search term at all. You just go into a very specific class, or even more general classes, and just go through everything that is active, or all active patents.
So, as a first step, you said that our main strategy is not to infringe anybody's IP rights.
Mm,
So,
mm.
it's also aligning your innovation strategy and business strategy. But when I look at your website, in the pipeline, there are lots of products. Maybe some of them are in the clinical trial, and one of them is in the launch phase. So, in while we are thinking this pipeline, how you can shape your business strategy with using your IP power in the pharma.
That's Yeah, that's a very good question. So for the two first antibodies in our pipeline, ranibizumab and certolizumab pegol, we have commercialization partners. So Stada is selling the ranibizumab biosimilar under the trademark of Ximluci in Europe, and we have filed a biosimilar license application in the US, and we expect that the FDA will give us license to sell the ranibizumab biosimilar, that is Ximluci, in the United States sometime this year. And we do have a commercialization partner for the second antibody in our pipeline, certolizumab pegol, and that's Biogen. It's a really big company that sells biologics. However, for our third biosimilar, nivolumab, we don't have a commercialization partner, and we are looking for one. We have talked to various different companies, and in those circumstances, it's very important to show that we have a patent portfolio protecting nivolumab, because that is crucial for the major players in the biosimilar market. They expect you to have filed patent applications on the DNA constructs, host cells, and methods of producing the specific biosimilar in question, or at least that you have patent protected your platform technology. So we are specialized in engineering genes and host cells so that we can produce antibodies at higher yields and thereby sell them cheaper. Otherwise, we can't compete with the originator. So we have to make sure that we can sell our products at least 20 to 30% cheaper than the originator. And the only way to achieve that is if we can produce more antibodies than what they do, and of course at higher purities. And our antibodies also undergo clinical trials. So that is, in a nutshell, explains business strategy. So, and of course, the patent portfolio is crucial. If you have one, it's easier to attract an investor. I think that was what you were alluding to.
Exactly. I would bring the topic this IP's portfolio strategy because it's very well connected with the market and the market conditions and the market strategies as well. And as I checked, that biosimilar market is growing year by year, so
Hmm.
it's always growing. But in terms of implementing your the best IP strategy, so you need to care about the crucial markets. So in terms of X-Brain's strategy, which countries are you seeing that the most important essential the markets for the biosimilars, or in terms of your candidate drug candidates, and or any plans for the rest of the world? So how do you shape that?
We focus primarily on Europe and USA, and our IP strategy is, of course, tailored with regard to that strategy. That being said, we have opposed patents in other jurisdictions, that is, jurisdictions outside of Europe and USA, because we might see various specific countries as potential markets in the future. So when I monitor competitors or a certain antibody, I keep an eye also on Japan, China, India, South Korea. And if we see activities by our competitors there, we do file oppositions. And if the period has lapsed, we are also open to filing revocation actions. And we have done that. We have successfully revoked the competitor's patent in an Asian country.
So it's another strategy for the IP portfolio management, finding others the patents, and if it is bothering you in the market, so you're trying to make it invalid, right? This is another strategy as well.
Yes, of course. So we keep an eye on other biosimilar players as well as the originators. So, the originators, you have to understand them. They have invested a lot of money on research and development and developed pharmaceuticals that save a lot of lives. Yes, everyone knows when their basic patents have expired, but they're still very litigious because if you haven't conducted the freedom to operate investigations thoroughly, you might have missed one of these method patents that protect, I don't know, it can be fermentation, et cetera, for purification, and they will litigate these patents. So it's extremely crucial to identify the risks. However, it's even more important to file oppositions against the originator's key patents. If you missed the opposition period in Europe, it's also important to file revocation actions in key jurisdictions in Europe. Not to forget USA, request inter partes review, because all of these processes or disputes that relate to revocation, doesn't matter what they're referred to, they're all bargaining chips, because the originator companies, they will always sue you, but and we will always try to revoke their patents in one way or another. At the end of the day, we always settle. So they offer to stop suing you or selling you, sending warning letters to you in exchange of you dropping oppositions, revocation actions, or inter partes review. So this is how the game is played. So it's also very important to file oppositions, revocation actions, and inter partes reviews. It doesn't matter if you're infringing the patent or not. The more of these you file, the better settlement you will achieve with the originator.
Yes, this is the game, but the game is played with the competitors. So, as you mentioned that you are working with some of the commercialization partners in Europe and other countries. So, in the biosimilar market, which companies do you see that these are the top companies in terms of the commercialization of the biosimilars?
I think the top companies are Teva and Sandoz are top companies, Alvatech. So if we look at our first product that's sold under the trademark Symlucy, in Europe, our main competitor, biosimilar competitor, is Teva. They also have a ranibizumab biosimilar. They sell it under the trademark of Ranibizio. In
Mm.
USA, Coherus, I think it is, that sells Cimerli or Chimerli, whatever it's called, which is also ranibizumab biosimilar. But they were just recently, or at least that ranibizumab biosimilar was bought up by Sandoz very recently, actually. So these Teva and Sandoz are probably the biggest players. Also, Alvatech. I think one of the managers at Alvatech is actually of Turkish origin. I think he used to work
Really?
as Abdi Ibrahim, Anıl Okay.
Hmm.
He's probably their chief commercialization officer, and he's also the CEO of Adalvo. So Alvotech and Adalvo are sister companies. So he's the
Hmm.
CEO of Adalvo and probably chief commercialization officer of Alvotech.
Yeah, yeah, I found him.
Yeah, you found them. So those are, and there are many. I mean, there are so many biosimilar companies. I can give you a list of 10, 15 others, but these are the main ones. We have the Indian company Biocon that works with Mylan and Viatris, and they are also very big. This constellation, Mylan, Viatris, Biocon, are also very dominant, especially with regard to some very specific biosimilars. So Alvatech is working with a Turkish biosimilar company called Polypharma. Polypharma with an F, but I think there is a Polish company that has a similar name, but this is a Polypharma with F, and Alvotech I think they have in-licensed Polypharma's aflibercept biosimilar, so Alvotech is planning on commercialization. An aflibercept biosimilar, which is sold under the trademark of Eylea by the originator company Regeneron.
Exactly. Recently, I'm following that some of the Turkish companies are investing on biosimilars as well. So it's
Mm.
we can say that it's growing.
It's growing, and it will probably become bigger in the future, especially when companies like Alvotech and Adalvo, they have recruited Turkish managers to their top positions, and that those Turkish managers will probably open up these Western companies' eyes to Turkish, generics and biosimilar industry.
But how about the therapeutics? How do you select the therapeutics that to develop the related biosimilars? How do you select the focus area? So because there are lots of diseases to be treated
Mm.
by the drugs, but how is it going on in this market?
This is a good question, and if I would be lying to you if I said like I was part of the team that chose the ones in our pipeline. I wasn't. They were chosen before I joined the company, but I have done a lot of work on them, such as creating a patent portfolio and conducting freedom to operate searches. So I was not part of that process, but I've been in the process of selecting 10 new ones. They are not on our homepage, and what we do is that we decide not to work within some areas. For example, we don't want to work with dementia and Alzheimer's disease because it's very difficult and costly to conduct clinical trials for those types of diseases. Plus, that there are other companies that are much better at that. Instead, we go for diseases such as various types of cancer. So nivolumab, which is the third antibody in our pipeline, it's for multiple myeloma, which is a type of cancer. We also go for various autoimmune diseases, such as arthritis or psoriasis. So our second pharmaceutical, certolizumab pegol, is for those types of diseases. What our management does is that they want to make sure that the therapeutic area or the antibody has sales over a certain figure. So we don't want to go for biologics that are like specific for very uncommon diseases. There are other companies that work on that. So we want to go for the biggest diseases or antibodies that sell the most, etc. So that is how our commercial team attacks this. However, I'm always involved in these talks because they have to know the patent expiry. So I'm part of the team that decides on new targets and analyzes them and determines patent expiries, which can be very complex. An antibody can be used for various different diseases, and they might have different expiries. Then you have patents protecting formulations. For antibody formulations are a bit different. I mean, you have a biological molecule that has to, for several years, have its activity in a solution in a vial. So you have to have a formulation that stabilizes it over long periods of time. You have to make sure that you don't get particulates over time in the solution, for example. So you have to be mindful of those types of patents.
So it's obvious that the business development team or the commercial team, whatever it calls, they need to be worked hand to hand or arm to arm with the IP team.
Yeah, it's crucial,
That's
and that was
crucial.
probably it's crucial. They can't do any business or take any decisions without knowing the patent landscape. There are companies that sell these reports. You can buy this information, but typically, in the best case scenario, you might pay 5,000 euros and buy a report, and you get the patent expiry. But that's for the antibody, because that doesn't even cover the four patents that protect various formulations. Sometimes there can be multiple formulations for a pharmaceutical. There can be one for a pre-filled syringe. There can be one for a pre-filled pen. There can be one for vial, etc. In the best case scenario, they might give you the expiry of formulations, but I don't think so. But that's not even enough, because you have to identify the patents that protect the production methods, the fermentation, harvest, purification, etc., etc., etc. There is no way these companies can provide that type of information. That's why at a pharma company or biosimilar company, you need to have an IP team which either does these searches themselves, or they have a network of specialists that can conduct these searches for them. Uh, Patent searchers or patent valuation experts or patent landscape experts, etc. So if you don't do this work yourself, you need to have people that you trust and that can conduct valuable searches, analysis, statistics, etc.
For sure, definitely. So, as a biosimilar company or the pharma company, your main job is to commercialize or make it available the product for the patients in the market by navigating in the IP landscape or avoiding any infringement, avoiding paying any royalties, or avoiding to be the blocked by the others. So
Hmm.
just imagine that I can maybe for the audience that might be very important to mention that, for example, you are holding a very powerful patent portfolio as an ex-brain biopharma company. So how do you react when you realize that one of your competitor is using or infringing one of your patent? What is your first reaction? Or before the reaction, how do you track them? How do you monitor them to understand if your patent is used or infringed by the others? Maybe we can make a story for that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mustafa. I conduct monthly monitoring, of course, by using several software that I have, either specific companies that I monitor, or the antibody, or the antibodies in our pipeline. I also have a search tool where I monitor protein and DNA sequences monthly. However, the biggest issue is not whether someone is using our technology. We're not that concerned about that because I think most biosimilar companies have their own technologies. We focus mainly, I mean, in my searches, I get all answers. However, our focus is the originator companies and their rights and making sure that they don't patent something that might block us. For example, I filed an opposition at the end of 2022, and there is an oral proceeding now in October, which I'll be attending. And it's for a patent that is not patentable, but the originator, one of the originators, did get a patent. And there are five opponents, and our job is to make sure that this patent, which is not patentable, that it's revoked so that biosimilar companies are not blocked from commercializing this product much earlier. And it's the best for patients. The earlier it will come into market, the cheaper the pharmaceuticals or the biosimilars become, and then more people can be treated, especially in poor developing countries or underdeveloped countries. In some countries, they can't afford biologics such as antibodies. And in those types of countries, it's important that there are biosimilars that can enter those markets as early as possible so that if there's a treatment, it should be available for all. That's the ultimate goal for almost all biosimilar companies.
But how about the disputes? How do you manage the patent disputes? So of course we don't want to see ourselves in the court in every time. Of course, negotiations works, but
Mm.
in terms of at the end of the story, how do you manage these patent disputes as I explained biopharma?
So we try to stay away from disputes. However, even if we have been mindful, we have been involved in disputes. And our CMOs, our contract manufacturing organizations, they are the weakest chain in the, or they are the weakest link in the chain. So what happened was that, like in middle of 2022, one of our contract manufacturing organizations was sued by an originator for an alleged infringement or a threatened infringement. There was no product on the market, of course, back then. And we wanted to take over the litigation. However, the originator wanted the dispute to be against our CMO, since that is, they're much easier to intimidate. And we, of course, went all in and made sure that we had the best legal team, or our CMO had the best legal team. And ultimately, they won this litigation. It was a preliminary injunction, actually, requested by an originator, and the originator lost this. That is, the Swiss Federal Patent Court dismissed the request for injunction. So the best strategy there is to successfully defend yourself, because it's even if you are a small company with limited budget, you have to make sure that you get the best possible defense, which we got. So that case was successfully, yeah, we were successful in defending the CMO, or the CMO itself was successful in defending itself, and they worked with a really good Swiss law firm. What we also do is that the biosimilar industry is kind of different than the generic industry with regard to the US market. In the US, there is a type of litigation managed by the Food and Drug Administration that's referred to as the patent dance, but the real name is BPCIA, or BPCIA litigation. BPCIA stands for Biologics Price Competition and Innovation Act. It was actually part of Obama's Affordable Care Act, and the Obama administration, they wanted to lower the cost of medicines and medical health care, and that's why they had this Affordable Care Act, or referred to as Obama, and part of that was this BPCIA. And the idea was that biosimilars should much faster, much easier start selling their biologics in the USA. And this patent dance or BPCI litigation works like this. So when a company like Xbrane files the biosimilar license application to the Food and Drug Administration, typically that application is accepted for review within a month. And when it's accepted for review, and that review takes almost a year, but once it's accepted for review, the biosimilar company can enter this patent dance, the BPCI litigation, and share the whole biosimilar license application. It's thousands of pages that covers everything from clinical trials to production methods. So you share your business secrets with the originator. And you might be thinking that's totally crazy, but it's not, because when we share the biosimilar license application with them, they have to, within 60 days, inform us about the patents that they believe that we are infringing. So they have to play with an open poker card. So they can list anything from 1 to 40 patents against you and claim or allege that you're infringing them. We are also playing with an open poker card. We are showing all of our production methods, and that's why freedom to operate assessments are so important for us. We have to make sure that every step in the production of our biologics does not infringe any of the originator's rights or any rights whatsoever. That's why freedom to operate is extremely crucial for us biologics or biosimilar companies, since most of us make use of this patent dance to pressure the originator to give us the list of patents that they will enforce against us in a future infringement trial at a US district court. And this process takes total 8 months. 8 months. So within 2 months, we get this list of patents that the originator is planning on enforcing against us, and they're locked to these patents. They cannot add anything else in the future if they decide to file an infringement lawsuit. And we'll have like 6 months to, prepare arguments against these patents or start, preparing for a revocation action in the USA, or opposition, which in the USA is referred to as inter partes review. And once they share us this list of patents that they allege we're infringing, we have to, within 2 months, within this patent dance process, answer them, give them a detailed statement on why we believe that we are not infringing or why these patents are invalid. And then they, within 2 months, have to file counter arguments, etc. So this whole process takes around 8 months. It's a major advantage for biosimilar companies because we get an insight into patents that might be enforced against us, and we have tons of time to prepare our defense, as well as start filing inter partes review against most risky patents. However, my experience or a friend's friend told me that typically during the patent dance procedure, the biosimilar company and the originator company, they decide to settle. The originator company, when they assess the whole application, they realize typically that, oh my God, they're not infringing any of our rights. And the biosimilar company realizes that they have a strong case. And typically, the originator company will settle for a certain royalty and down payment. So, I mean, the true objective of patent litigation is peace. Both parties want peace, and peace can be achieved during this patent dance. And when the originator, when they give you this list of patents that they allege that you're infringing, it's referred to as the 3A list. They also indicate whether they're open to out licensing these patents. They don't have to, but they can show whether they're open. That also triggers the biosimilar company to start discussing in parallel with the originator whether they're open to in licensing the originator's patent. So I think this patent dance procedure, the BPCI litigation, has probably helped biosimilar companies to enter the US market much faster than before.
So finding the peace is possible.
Yes, it is actually. It depends on the originator. So some originators are willing to outlicense their patents, and with those types of originators, biosimilar company will achieve peace.
So Hakan, I can continue another 15 minutes. So your voice is also coming to my ear very clearly, and your pronunciation is very good to listen. I would prefer to continue, but
I have no time limitation. It's all up to you. So I can speak for hours, but I would knock you out with boredom.
I can imagine that because it's very easy to listen because you are mentioning each steps very smoothly understandable. So I think the quality of our podcast will be very good for the audience. But before
Mm.
closing, maybe we can talk about some tactics or some takeaways for the biosimilar companies or the generic companies, in terms of the patent litigation strategies that you are already implementing? What can we say to our audience?
It's important to have a tactic for each type of dispute because there are different types of disputes. You have the injunctions, you have the infringement lawsuits that are used by the originators, and in the biosimilar in the arsenal of the biosimilar company, you have the oppositions, revocation actions, and inter partes reviews. So for each type of dispute, you need to have a tactic and then an overarching strategy for how to use these tactics together. And sometimes on a monthly basis, you might have to change tactics, you might have to change strategy actually. So you have to be very flexible, constantly monitor the originators and other competitors, and constantly conduct freedom to operate searches. Sometimes you might have to conduct the same search within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, because the originator has a lot of pending patent applications. And you have to make sure that you make sure to know when they're granted patent protection so that you can optionally file revocation actions or oppositions, etc. So it takes a lot of work and effort. Either you need to conduct these freedom to operate searches and monitoring internally, or you need to have experts that can help you with this. This is very crucial. One has to be mindful of others' rights. You should have a non-infringement policy, which we have. At all costs, avoid infringing competitors' patents. Not launching at risk is our IP policy. But if this doesn't work and you are sued, you have to make sure that you have the best possible defense. In order to create a bargaining chip for a future settlement, you have to oppose. You have to try revoking your competitor's patents in multiple markets so that your competitor, in our case, the originator, is pressured to drop infringement lawsuits or future infringement lawsuits. That is the end goal, or the end game is actually to settle with the originator and make sure that you are paying as low down payment as possible and as low royalty as possible.
So maybe Hakan, before closing, I can ask a personal question to you.
Yes,
Like
yes.
the combination of the personal and business. Are you happy with being an IP manager and or working in the IP industry? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm really happy and very passionate about this. Now and then I get offers to go over to the IP consultancy sector, and they're even open to pay more in salary. But I would not do that because it's really fun working in house. I can implement my vision, and one also acts as a jack of all trades. So I work for everything from invention harvesting to drafting, prosecution, opposition, pre-litigation, litigation, etc. And then I meet the IP departments of various different companies, like Stada, for example. I really enjoy working with them. Their head of IP, just like me, is originally from Turkey, and she's very good at what she does. It's Şenay Has. And I learned from her and her colleagues and the other IP teams that I come into contact with. So it's really, really fun, and I'm very passionate about what I'm doing. It's never boring, and the fact that things change very fast and I have to be flexible and re-strategize and have a different tactic maybe from week to week or month to month makes it even more exciting. So there are tons of things to juggle with, and I get to meet a lot of people since I go to conferences and speak. I create a network, meet with new people. I get to meet you, for example. I had never before done recording like this. That is very exciting and fun. So, thanks for giving me this opportunity. But I really enjoy what I'm doing.
It's good to hear that. Yeah, thank you so much as well for from my side to be in our podcast episode. I hope we can record another the possible topics in the next features. And to our audience, you can search Hakan Yıldırım on LinkedIn and other platforms. That you will see that he is very famous in the pharma industry. That he is on always on the stage to speak about patent strategies in the pharma industry. So it's really good to see that. It's exciting. And today I learned two different Turkish names as well who are working in the pharma industry as a patent leaders.
Yes, and those are very important names. Like Anil Okay, he has been to X-Brain. He visited us because he's a good friend of our CEO, Martin Omark. And our CEO is actually married to a Turkish woman. So
Really?
yes, he is. And we are a very multicultural firm. Our vice CEO, he's originally from Iran. We have people from many different countries, like Greece and Poland and Sudan in Africa. So it's a very diverse mix people. And Shania Haas, she has built the IP department of Stada, which is a major generic and biosimilar company. And it's just that every meeting that I have with her, I learn something new. She's extremely strategic and plans ahead and has a lot of knowledge and is very, very good at various types of negotiations. And she has a big team that she's leading, and of course, interact with her teammates and learn things from them. And we exchange information on various topics. So it has been very rewarding to get to know her. And it was a major coincidence that the heads of IP departments of two companies that are collaborating are originally from Turkey, and sometimes we speak Turkish. You should talk to her. I'm not sure if she would have time to do this podcast, but I think she would actually.
I can try. It's really good to know that. So it means that the Turkish patent experts in abroad from Turkey are everywhere. So they are acting as a good positions.
Yes, yes, we are. And it's a major achievement. Imagine both her parents and my parents, they were immigrants once upon a time in European countries. And I don't know what her parents work with, but typically, it's not typically academic job. For example, my parents, they were running fast food restaurants. But then, their children, the second generation immigrants, they decide to sometimes pursue academic careers. And at the end, we end up to pharma companies heading the IP department. So that's a major achievement. I'm proud of that. And I'm also proud of her achievements. She's really good at what she's doing. Hopefully she will like to hopefully you'll contact her and she will
I
agree
will
to
approach. I will
podcast.
approach.
Yes. Yeah.
So Hakan, thank you so much. It was a lovely
Mhm.
conversation. It's almost 1 hour, so I think our audience is also will enjoy what we talk about the patent litigation strategies in the pharma industry. So I hope we will see each other in person uh,
Yes, I hope that too.
wherever in Europe countries or in Turkey. So let's keep in touch.
Yes, let's keep
Uh,
in touch, Mustafa. Thanks for inviting me to this very, very fun interview.
my pleasure. Thanks to you as well. So see you then.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye. So I'm closing my the podcast episodes. So we were together with Hakan Yıldırım from Xbrain Biopharma. He's acting as an IP head of the IP in that company. So we talk about the patent litigation strategies in the pharma industry in different perspectives. I hope you also enjoyed. As you know, that Patent Effect podcast is published on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the Google Podcast. So see you then in the next following episode. So have a great day. Ciao.